11. And I understand that we have an amendment somewhere in the back of the room. But in the meantime, since that amendment is apparently not quite ready for presentation, Senator Francisco, you said that you might have an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did talk with our reviser yesterday afternoon, and I'll ask her to pass this out.
The amendment has been distributed. Senator Francisco, you wish to explain your amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had still been concerned about using the word proposed rules and regulations, since we understood that that might mean rules and regulations that were already in the process. And I think the intent, or my understanding of the intent during our discussion, was that we were going to make sure that members of the commission could submit to the commission potential rules and regulations, so that doesn't have to be in the process. It can be an idea. Here's what we'd like to do about night coyote hunting. And then this is saying the commission may, by a majority vote, direct the secretary to make a report on any potential rule and regulation. That point, it would be starting in the process. And of course, it always comes with a little change to what all the bill covers. So that's on the first page. I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Committee, well, let's let you go ahead and make a motion on the proposed amendments, Senator, and then we'll see if there's a second and see if there's discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move this amendment.
Okay, there's a motion to amend Senate Bill 211 with the balloon that's been presented. Is there a second? Seconded by Senator Ware. Discussion on the motion to amend, committee. Senator Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a worthy point of conversation. To go back, I think the proponents of this bill, I believe we're seeking, and then of course we as a committee, we can come with our own thoughts, but we're seeking to be able to direct the secretary to develop a regulation that accomplishes X, right? So this would deviate, I think, from the bill's original intent. So I just want to go back to, I think, what the original intent is versus the amendment. I think it's a worthy conversation. That's fine. But so that's all I have to say for right now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Senator Reichman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for this amendment. I don't normally say that from the senator, but one of the concerns that people had is that there's there was things that they considered being shot down, couldn't go anywhere from the commissioner. And with this amendment, if I understand it correctly, it says potential rules, but it can also, by a majority vote, they can direct them to go ahead and proceed what they're concerned with. They brought this because they could not say anything. I mean, it was dead. So this is not like other senators said. It wasn't exactly what they asked for, but that's one of the things that we have that option as a committee to read things, and if we feel we need to in our words, try to make it better or make it better. So I'll be in support of this amendment. Thank you.
Additional comments, questions, committee, on the proposed amendment? Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a little bit not understanding what the word report to the report on the potential rules on the first page, and then on the back it also uses it by a majority vote, direct the secretary to make a report on any potential rules and regulations. The commission's already voted by a majority vote on that potential rules before, then the secretary can make a report. Doesn't mean they have to do anything. Is that what I'm reading on this?
Senator Francisco?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I don't think that this was, we're trying to do a number of things here, but this, I think the intent or what the proponents had wanted was for one member of a commission to be able to suggest a potential rule and regulation. And this does that because it says members may submit to the commission. The commission then, in turn, would need to have a majority vote to direct the secretary to make a report. And at this point, it's still a potential rule and regulation because you haven't gone through the process. You haven't had the stamps from the Attorney General and the Secretary of State's office. So then, at that point, you have a report, and the commission, I think, could act on that. Or the report, would you rather say majority vote direct the secretary to submit a proposed rule and regulation? I mean, you could have that. And it's how much conversation do you want to have? So I think this wording, you're still in that conversation and developing it by a majority vote. If we said the commission may by a majority vote direct the secretary to submit proposed rules and regulations, then I don't know how much more conversation there'd be. I think those are the two ways that we could go.
Senator Alley?
My concern here with just making a report, he could make a report and that would be the end of the conversation. It's the way I read that. There's no other action beyond that is the way I read that.
Senator Titus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My comments are along the lines of Senator Alley's. I would be concerned that the commission can't direct a draft regulation to be prepared to move forward. It leaves this all still pretty vague, if that's the intent of it. Thank you.
Senator Alley, or Shane?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I guess to that point, if Senator Francisco, if you could clarify, was your intent to be able to have the commission direct the secretary to develop a regulation or simply to direct a report, or you're open to the idea potentially of to make a report and or develop a regulation?
Senator Francisco?
I'm certainly open to that. My idea is that you wanted to make sure that it was a majority of the commission. And we probably need to make sure that we're working to make sure that the public also is part of that process and that hearing.
Senator Shane?
And one, I guess, potential question for Revisor Lawrence is potential rule and regulation, is that something that is defined in statute? Does potential carry any kind of statutory meaning, or would this be uncharted language?
Sir, you have an answer for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am not aware of any definition of the term potential rule and regulation. I can run that by our administrative rules and regulations revisors to get their input on that, but I do not know right now.
Senator Shane?
Okay, yeah, that'd be great to get an answer to that question.
Additional questions, comments, committee, on the proposed amendment? Seeing none, Senator Shane?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would you entertain a substitute conceptual amendment to revise this to say to make a report and or develop a regulation, or develop a proposed regulation?
So a substitute motion is in order, and I'm not following what you were saying.
So it would be a conceptual amendment. Right now, Senator Francisco's amendment says the commission may, by a majority vote, direct the secretary to make a report on any potential rule and regulation. could we do a conceptual amendment to state the commission may by a majority vote direct the secretary to make a report and/or develop any proposed rule and regulation?
If you wish to make that in the form of a motion, I will allow.
Okay, so moved.
Okay, so there is a motion. You heard the motion. There is a second?
The second.
Senator Francisco, so we have a substitute motion to amend the proposed language, which has not been adopted. But the motion would be, the substitute motion would be to amend the bill with the substitute language rather than what's been proposed. So a discussion on the motion. So if this motion passes, the bill would be amended with this language as it was amended. Revisor Lawrence?
Just a clarifying question for the maker of the motion. Would your motion just be the second sentence that is in blue italics and not amend the proposal that had already been adopted by the committee? So the paragraph 2 would still say, may submit to the commission any proposed rule and regulation, or would it also include the change to potential?
I'm okay leaving potential unless we, I mean, if we identify there's an issue, then we can amend that on the floor, but I'm okay with leaving potential for now.
All right. Additional questions on the substitute motion? Seeing none, Senator Shane, do you wish to close on your motion?
I close?
All right. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. The amendment is adopted. So that would be considered the Francisco Shane amendment. I'm just making my own notes. And Senator Alley, you had an amendment yesterday that you were working on. You proposed it and then decided that some questions you might want to do additional work. Senator Alley. I'm sorry, not Alley, it's Fag. Yeah, I can't tell you guys apart.
It looks on
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll call this one the Senator Blue, Senator Fag amendment, is what I would tell you on this one. So, I just found out when I got here that we only have 4 districts, not 5 districts. So Revisor Lawrence has already got me covered on this. I'm impressed, thank you. So this really needs to be corrected. And what the plan is, I'm going to throw that one away. What the plan is that the Senate President, the Speaker of the House, and the Attorney General has at-large, and then the Governor has the 4 districts, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what that does is that there's actually 7 commissioners that we spread over 4 districts, is the way it works right now. The way the law is written right now shows 5 districts, so, yeah.
So are you handing out a different amendment, staff, than what we were just received? Okay, because the one I have says that the Attorney General is Region 2, but that's not correct, so okay. Okay. So the first that you were handed out, do what you want to with it. I fold it up and set it aside. But the second one is the amendment center.
That just got,
Okay.
that's what we just found out this morning. So to keep it simple, 1, 2, 3, 4, the governor appoints on 4-year term. The Attorney General, Speaker of the House, Senate, President, 2-year term, at large. That covers our 7 over 4 districts.
Okay. Motion to amend, is there a second? I guess you're making that as a motion, right?
Mr. Chairman, I think this is, should we add this to this, Senator Blue? That's the part, yeah. So along with that, we'll let Senator Blue kind of explain the back part of that.
Okay, I don't have a back part.
How do we want to do that?
I would prefer, well, do they need to go together?
What?
We've actually got 2 pieces of paper, 2 amendments.
Yes.
And rather than having 2 senators basically making a motion, I'm going to just, centrally, we'll go with what you handed out as relates to 1, 2, 3, 4 for the governor at large, for the speaker, the president, and the attorney general. And then we will deal with the next one here in just a moment. If this is adopted or not, we can still look at the other.
Okay.
So you're making a
Mr.
motion?
Chairman, I'm making that motion.
All right. Is there a second to the motion by the Senator Senator Baloo, seconds to motion. Discussion on the motion to amend. Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The amendment still refers to, and this is in the 1, 2, 3, 4th.
It's the simple one that's on page 1 of the bill, is what we're looking at.
Thank you.
Okay. Senator Starnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and sorry for the interruption. Okay, just for clarity, we're voting on this one that has 2 pages. We're not, okay,
One that doesn't have anything on the backside.
okay.
Okay, we'll let our revisor
All right.
help to.
So if you look at the very first box at the top that says a proposed amendment for Senate Bill 211, in there it will say 4 regions, and the date will be March 10th. That is the one the committee is looking at the moment.
Thank you for the clarification.
Certainly, I want to make certain everyone is on the same page here. So if you have an amendment that there's something on the back, that's not the right one. It says 4 regions, March 10, 2025. Is everyone on the correct amendment? And then the other one I think we may need to hang on to bring back in. Further discussion on the proposed amendment. Seeing none, Senator Alley, you may close on your amendment. I'm sorry, Senator Fagg.
The way the law is written right now, we got 5 districts, and this will bring it to 4. So this is cleaning up a lot of stuff, is what I would tell you here. So I'd close on that.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion appears to pass. Motion does pass. Now, Senator Fagg, you're wanting to turn it over to Senator Baloo okay, Senator Baloo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the first page that you guys, the first one that was handed out that has a backside, and there will have to be cleanup because it says 5 regions and it's only 4. So along with my motion that I'm going to make, I will ask for the revisor to have the technical cleanup in it. But I have concerns that with the at-large members, that they all are going to be from the same region. And I don't think that that's fair to have all of them all from one region. So this is just stating that no more than 2 members shall be from the same region when we're doing at-large. And then the other portion of it is dealing with when we are doing appointments by the Attorney General, the Speaker of the House, or the Senate President. One thing that we've noticed is sometimes some of those positions, the person before them appoints, and then they don't get to appoint somebody to that position. And so, and it could be a situation where you completely disagree with that person that was appointed before you, but that's now your appointment that you have to stick on to from a previous appointer. So what we've done in other situations is putting on a 2-year term or until a successor is appointed and qualified. So it's allowing if at the end of a Senate president term, if they appoint somebody and then a new Senate president comes in, that new Senate president can now appoint somebody else for that term, for the remainder of that term. Yes.
It's a motion. I didn't have my mind.
Sorry.
It was a motion. There is a second by Senator Shane. Discussion on the motion. And it would be page 2 of the balloon that revisor will let you weigh in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator DeBlue did an excellent job explaining. The only other thing that I wanted to clarify is that yesterday there was a question on how the transition would take place. If you look, the second to last box that begins on July 1, 2026, this would provide for 3 of the current appointees' terms expire on June 30th of 2026. The other commissioners expire on June 30th, 2028, but this would provide a hard cutoff, which is, so on July 1, 2026, all of the appointments could change over. This is the same language that the committee put in last year when they changed the formation of the committee. It just changes the date to July 1, 2026. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Appreciate that clarification. Question, Senator Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question for Senator Blue. So in the portion of the amendment that talks about to the 2-year term, you had said, shall hold office for a 2-year term or until a successor is appointed and qualified, but the language of the amendment says and until a successor is appointed and qualified. So just want to make sure we're capturing what you intended.
Senator Blue, do you understand the question, or do you
Yeah,
want
can
to
I-
defer to the reviser? All right. Reviser Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if you look in the actual language of the current law, it currently says each member of the commission shall hold office for a term of 4 years and until a successor is appointed and qualified. I just took that same language that currently exists. If the committee would like to change that, I am fine to change it, but I would recommend changing it in both places.
Senator Shane.
I'm mechanistically trying to think through the ramifications of an and versus a or, so I'm happy to have any of my fellow committee members contribute to that. I guess as I would interpret this,
Senator Shane.
yeah, I guess I'm trying to process mechanistically, like how does this function when it's a and versus an or?
I understand.
So, yeah.
What you're saying, for a term of 2 years or until a successor is appointed and qualified. I kind of like the or, but we'll leave it to the will of the committee. But you haven't, we don't have a motion on the floor for that or. Senator Blue, do you have a thought on that?
I'm fine. I can amend my amendment and also put on or change it. I'm fine with whatever the will of the committee is willing to do. My intent is just, I don't think it's fair if you are somebody that just was appointed or just selected to be this office holder, and then now you have somebody else that you don't approve on your, as your appointment.
So we'll go with Senator Starnes before we look for a motion.
This is not related to Senator Shane's discussion, but on the one bubble on the second page, line 8, July 26, it says administration regions 1 and 5. I don't think we have 5, right?
That would be changed.
Okay.
Stricken a technical to strike and put 4.
Thank you.
Okay. And we call these balloons, but you can call them a bubble if you wish. Okay. So, Senator Blue, are you then wanting to change your motion to change that one word to or as well?
Yes, yep, I would love that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
There's a motion, and I don't remember who seconded it. Was it Shane? The seconded is, are you all right with that change? Okay. So, committee, you would strike the word and in the third bubble and put the word or on the, right? Okay. And that would be the very last line, the very first word on the very last line. Okay. Reviser Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You are correct. I would also make that change in line 2 on page 2 because that one refers to the 4-year terms, but that way the language would be consistent whether it's a 2-year or 4-year term.
So we would technically want everything to line up. Okay. Okay. Questions, committee, on the substitute motion, Senator, or I guess it's not a substitute motion, it was just an amended motion. All right, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm wondering if the proposer can explain to me how it would work to say not more than 2 members shall be from the same Fish and Wildlife Administration region when they're different appointing authorities.
Thank you. I was thinking about this. They're not always appointed. There are times that the Senate president will appoint somebody, and then weeks or so go on later, and then the Speaker of the House appoints somebody. So they're never appointed on the same day, same time, same everything. So it's just whoever is appointed. If the Senate president appoints somebody first, then the Speaker of the House is just going to have to notice that this person was appointed from this region, and therefore they have to appoint somebody from a different region.
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my concern was this does give a date on July 1st, 2026. that, I guess it says may appoint, but it would be possible for them all to come up with an appointment on the same day, and then somebody'd have to sort that out.
Additional questions, comments? Seeing none, Senator Balloon, you may close on your motion to amend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I close on my motion.
All right, you've heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion appears to pass. Motion does pass. Further amendments, further discussion on Senate Bill 211. Senator Ware.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't know, you may have noticed that I haven't had a whole lot to say about this bill because I find it unnecessary. I have seen no evidence myself of any substantial problem with the system that we have or with the leadership that we have. That's basically it.
Additional thoughts, questions, discussion, motions on Senate Bill 211? If there's no, Senator Shane.
Mr. Chair, if there's no more discussion, I would move that the committee pass Senate Bill 211 out of committee favorably as amended.
There's a motion by Senator Shane, seconded by Senator Fagg, to pass the bill as amended favorably. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, there's no use closing because there's no discussion unless you just have something you're dying to say good. I'm glad you don't. And as a part of that motion, we will allow our reviser to be able to get all of the wording together because it's been amended several times, and so it's hard to follow, but we will allow our reviser to make it all fit together. Okay. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
Motion appears to pass. Motion does pass. The bill is passed out of committees. The next item on the agenda committee is a hearing on House Bill 2255. So we will open the hearing on House Bill 2255. And we will start with an overview of the legislation from our reviser when she gets her notes together and is ready for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, committee. I actually don't have my notes, so please bear with me. House Bill 2255, as amended by the House Committee, would amend the weights and measures law. Specifically, the bill would amend the definitions concerning weights and measures, the fees, and it also has to do with the electric vehicle supply equipment. So, to quote my fellow reviser who worked on this bill is not as scary as it looks. There is sort of a lot happening, but a lot of it is restructure and reorganization. So currently in Chapter 83 of the statutes, the Department of Agriculture is tasked with the inspection and regulation on weights, scales, and point of sale systems. Chapter 83 includes 5 articles, including the authorized standards and enforcement provisions, standards and enforcements, scales, dispensing devices, and civil penalties. All of these articles include very similar provisions regarding the definitions, licensing and regulations, penalties for violations, administrative procedures, and severability. This bill would repeal certain duplicative sections, consolidate the chapter's provisions, and enact a couple of new sections, particularly 16 and 17. This would sort of help restructure and organize Chapter 83 to be a little bit more efficient and easy to work with. Additionally, as I mentioned, the bill deals with fees. So currently, the fee schedule for these weights and measures is in KSA 83-214. This is Section 5 of the bill. And this section would replace the existing schedule with an updated schedule. Certain fees would be increased. The schedule does look a little bit messy in the bill. I have been assured that it would look a lot cleaner if the bill were to pass and published in statute. But I would just say right off the bat, if you do have any questions on these fees, the department is here to answer your questions. And the third thing that I'm going to talk about today is the electric vehicle equipment. This happens in new sections 23 and 24. This would establish new requirements for electric vehicle supply equipment that is used commercially. So this is electric vehicle charging stations. It's my understanding that currently the statutes do not contemplate these types of equipment. So the statute adds these new sections to deal with that. There is a definition now of electric vehicle supply equipment in the definition section, and the new requirements for this equipment would include that the equipment must be tested and inspected annually by a licensed technical representative, a city and county representative, or someone from the department. If the equipment has not been tested or inspected within the previous 365 days, it would have to be taken out of service. It would require test weights and measures to be approved and sealed within the preceding 365 days. Reports of test inspections would be furnished to the owner or operator and sent to the secretary within 10 days. Inaccurate equipment would have to be withdrawn from use until corrected and verified as accurate. Service companies would have to maintain reports of all their work performed, and the secretary would be allowed to test electric vehicle supply equipment for accuracy after repairs if notified of non-compliance. The bill would take effect on July 1, and it did pass the House on a vote of 120 to 2, and I will be happy to answer your questions.
All right, I heard you say you weren't happy to answer some questions. Questions of our revisor, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Revisor Lawrence, if there's no charge for for charging an electric vehicle, say it's in a hotel parking garage, and they just allow people who are staying at the hotel to plug in their car, would this still require that charging device to be inspected annually?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, I really enjoy getting a sneak preview of all the questions that you have for the department. So I will defer that to them.
I just wondered if this language in the bill, that's fine.
Senator Bowers.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick comment. I support this bill. This is an example of the law keeping pace with the advancements in technology.
Additional questions of our revisor? Seeing none, thank you for your report. Committee, our first and only conferee to testify in person is Kelsey Olson, Deputy Secretary of the Kansas Department of Agriculture. Deputy Secretary Olson, welcome to the committee. You can simplify this simple bill.
I will do my best, sir. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Kelsey Olson, Deputy Secretary of the Kansas Department of Agriculture. Weights and Measures is one of the many programs that the agency has under its purview. And Weights and Measures essentially ensures that when we go to use a scale or a dispensing device as a consumer, that scale is accurate and dispenses the appropriate volume of X, Y, or Z, whatever it may be. These examples can range from a grocery store scale of weighing your apples, ensuring your apples are of the weight of what you're paying for, or your fuel pumps when you go to purchase gasoline for your vehicle. Our team and the semi-privatized industry ensures that those devices are accurate and consistent. This bill, as Revisor Lawrence pointed out, there is a number of components to it. But first, I wanted to talk about the fees. So in our metrology lab, which is part of the Kansas Department of Agriculture's laboratory, our team has the capability of certifying that the measuring devices that are used to test the commercial scales are accurate. And this service can be done anywhere. People choose to come to our laboratory, but currently we are below average of standard rates for the industry. We are very low. In fact, 16 other state entities and companies out of state have chosen to come to the Department of Agriculture because of our low rates. We are experiencing a 6 to 8 month lead time and delay because of that increase of volume of work that's coming to our laboratory. So we believe we would like to increase our rates to be more competitive so that we can better cover our overhead and operate as effectively as a program, but also ensure that we are being consistent and fair across the board. there is a number of components to the fees. And in our fee, you can test sets of scales and measurements, you can test individual pieces of equipment, and there are different mass echelon schedules. So the higher the echelon, the more accurate that equipment must be, and the lower the number, there's more medium accuracy or lower accuracy rates. So there is a lot of components to the fee schedule. I'm happy to answer questions as those come up, but that is a key component of the changes of the fees. We also are asking for language that would allow for us to oversee the electrical vehicle charging stations. At the national level, the National Institute of Standards and Measures has established standards for which states are expected to ensure accuracy. And in order to conduct and bring in electrical vehicle charging stations, we've asked for this language going forward. Currently, I just want to make it clear that currently any electrical charging station, we do not oversee at this point in time. And to address Senator Francisco's question, it is not specifically clear if it's a free charging station in the bill language. That's something we would address through regulation, but I would envision us still requiring checking of all electrical vehicle charging stations to ensure accuracy and fairness for the consumer. And then lastly, there are a number of definitions that are being reorganized. That is what leads to the lengthiness of this bill. In our previous statutes, there were sets of definitions in multiple sections. Sometimes this was causing confusion in consistent sections in the previous language. And so we have done our best to streamline this and put all of the definitions into one section so that they are accurate and transparent to those who are looking at these statutes. Weights and measures is a consumer protection component that many of us take for granted when we check out at the register or we are purchasing our fuel. But we take great strides to work with the industry as well as our own staff to ensure that the scales devices that are scattered throughout the state are accurate for the consumer. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to stand for any questions.
So currently, you're telling us that electrical charging stations are not regulated, and there's no one inspecting them to make certain they're properly charging?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. There is approximately 6,000 charging stations in this state. Some are charging, have a cost to the consumer for utilizing the service, and some are free, but there is no one or no entity out there ensuring that that charging station is providing an accurate volume of kilowatts and charging capacity to those cars.
How often would these electric charging stations need to be tested to ensure accuracy? In other words, if you test them one day, they correct, could they not, once you come back and test and say, it's good, then?
We would strive for a consistent schedule of 365 days, which would be consistent with our large scales and small scale devices throughout the state.
You indicate also that because the fees are low, your words on your testimony, as a result, which implies that because they're low, the laboratory continues to have a 6 to 8 month lead. I don't understand how increasing the fees would cause the laboratory to accomplish their work faster.
So we believe that we would have less interest in companies coming to our laboratory to use our services to certify their sets of scales or their measuring devices. Companies who provide the certification and certify the scales, we are semi-privatized in Kansas. So private companies can go and conduct the service for a fee to the business, and then those reports are shared to us, at which we gather that information in a standard database. Our staff that we have to do this, as well as the private, they have to have their measuring devices and their weights certified on a regular basis. So majority of our customers come from Kansas. But when our staff go to request services or when the private company goes to request services in Kansas, they are finding that they need a 6 to 8 month lead time because of the volume of work that we receive from around the country. We believe that if we had more competitive prices, that clients would choose to go to a more local laboratory in their state or in their general region. There are only about 11 laboratories that provide some of these services, metrology services across the country. So we will continue to see some interest from outside of Kansas, but we believe it would drop immensely as there are companies from Florida and Tennessee and Montana that ship their weights to us to have those certified and adjusted.
So this could equate to less FTEs because you'd have less work?
Most likely, no. I appreciate the question. We only have 2 FTEs that currently do this work. One focuses on the larger equipment, and the other one focuses on the very small, minute equipment. Each of them hold different certification standards by NIST that allow them to conduct this work. And so it would not necessarily reduce our need for work, but it would reduce their burden of stress so that they feel like they can take a vacation or stay home when they are sick. And right now that they feel as though that they are struggling to be able to do that because of the volume of work that they feel is on their plate at the time.
Last question from the chair, and I apologize for so many questions. With the addition of department inspecting electrical charging stations, are you going to ask for additional FTEs?
Again, it would not be our vision to do that currently. We believe that this is something that, while we would want to have that ability within our inspection team, the privatized companies could also provide that work, and we would not envision increasing our staff at this point.
Questions committee of lots of questions. Senator Reichman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Deputy Secretary, in your presentation. I'd like to kind of follow up with the fee aspect of the chairman was talking about. What's a cost for to run a fee, and how much different is it then from the ones? I guess if there's total 11, there's 10 others across the country, and I'm just kind of curious to see how much we're talking about. Thank you.
So it does really vary on what the rates that we are charging. However, and one example that comes to mind is in Kansas for our weight sets. So measurements that are up to 10 pounds, they often come in a set. Kansas charges $35. The regional average is $176.83. We are substantially out of line with the average. And so we would look to adjust some of those where we are significantly out of line.
Senator Fagg, are you finished, Senator Reichman? Okay, Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Deputy Secretary, thank you for your presentation. Was there any discussion of maybe having an in-state and out-of-state charge and somehow doing a functional cost analysis, because we want to make sure we cover our costs for stuff out of state? That's my comment. Thank you.
So Senator Fagg, I love your question. Thank you for that. As an economist, I love digging into the numbers and talking about unit costs. And we did look at that, but our chief counsel and our legal team pointed out that there has been a number of cases where states have been prohibited from charging multiple costs for in-state and out-of-state because of commerce clauses and interactions with pricing structures there. So we did not pursue that, but we did look at what we need to be more competitive, to cover our overhead costs and to ensure that we are being competitive with peer laboratories.
Senator Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you, Deputy Secretary Olson. So if I've read this correctly, you've sort of woven in the electric vehicles into the statute, so it would just fall under your current reg granting authority. With any other program, you'd apply NIST standards to the private entities doing this. Summarizing all that correctly, is that right?
That is correct.
What's the cost on how expensive is the equipment, like the electric testing equipment? I assume we don't have any of that in the closet, right?
Senator Titus, you are correct. We currently do not have any testing equipment, and they can be quite expensive for some of the voltage meters that would be needed, which is why we believe this still should be something that's semi-privatized, and we would slowly integrate that into our inspection routines as applicable if this were to go forward.
Last question, and while we're doing kind of a general review of the statutes, I do, by the way, appreciate this very much. These statutes were a complete mess, and this will be well needed to help people understand what the law is in the future. But you guys also, or Weights and Measures, manages sort of price checks, price verification, I think is the right term, sale prices, things like that. We see so many things now online or in-app only where we get different prices. Do you have the authority to regulate, like, say when I go to the Dillon store and there's an online-only sale that's only available in the app, can you guys regulate that under current law, or would you need an expansion of your authority to start regulating those type of sales? Just asking while we're cracking the thing open.
Oh, I do not believe that we have the authority to do that under the way our statutes are currently written. But we have noticed that that is an increasing concern to consumers as they try to navigate the digital tools that are out there and how our retail spaces are conducting their business.
Thank you.
Senator Alley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Senator Francisco asked a question earlier, and I don't know that we have it. And I do have 2 of these charging stations in my hometown that do not charge. So do they need to be inspected?
It would be our perspective that they should be inspected and still certified that they are accurate, but we have not dove into those particulars with our team at this point in time, and it's not specified in statute, but as it is with other devices, we think that it should be consistent for the consumer's protection.
Okay. Second question is there a mechanism in a charging station, or would there be in a charging station, that would identify a VIN number so that you could charge someone that is charging in these charging stations?
So the charging stations, along with, whether it's your fuel station, they all do have a serial number or some sort of identification. And that would be some of the data that we would keep in our database to ensure that they are being consistently inspected. But I'm not sure if your question is to go back to charge someone for that. I mean, so those would be registered, and we would be able to identify who that entity is, or that company could procure someone to come and certify their scale for them.
The question was, is there capability in the charging station now to identify who and what car is charging in that charging station? Is there a VIN number identification or some other type of identification when you plug in your car?
I don't know the specifics to say what kind of communication occurs between those 2 devices, but we would, if they are charging for the service, oftentimes that the customer has to pay ahead of time before those 2 devices are connected. Sometimes I think they communicate, but I don't know those specifics at this point.
Last question. I'm old enough to remember brownouts. And if the utility company, in the summer, you get a lot of electricity use, and if that is not enough power going to the charging stations, how do you regulate that within the charger? Is that going to be something you could test for?
I'd have to look more into that because I don't have that answer at this point in time. I think some of that will depend on how they are connected into the electrical grid and where they're getting their electricity from, but I don't know that answer today.
Appreciate your answers, and I'm sorry for my questions.
I can almost feel an amendment. Senator Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll keep it brief. Would this impact folks that have in-home charging stations? Would you guys start regulating those and verifying that people's personal equipment is?
That would not be something we are looking at. We are only looking at charging stations that would be accessible to the general public.
And then, so on Bill, on page 6, and the revisor might be able to answer this. I'm wondering if these are newly envisioned authorities of the secretary. So line 27, the secretary may adopt rules and regulations concerning standards of workmanship for technical representatives and service companies, requirements for contractual responsibilities and fulfillment of agreements by service companies, and maintenance and furnishing of reports and information necessary for the secretary to carry out the provisions of this act. Are these newly envisioned authorities, or are these being moved and shuffled around within the statutes, or can you speak to that?
I would rely on the revisor to clarify, but we currently have rule and reg authority to adopt regulations under this act. I strongly suspect this is just a reorganization of it, but I would defer to Revisor Lawrence.
Supervisor Lawrence, do you have an answer?
Give me a few minutes and I'll.
Okay, and it doesn't have to be today. We can answer that in the future. And then afterwards, I'd love to talk to you about the fee structures and if there's an envisioned gross margin and an acceptable target backlog, but I'll spare the committee from those conversations.
Additional questions? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so I'll get back to this question. I see that it does talk about electric vehicle supply equipment that's used for commercial purposes. But how are you protecting a consumer that is getting something for free?
It would be more the general concept of, as an entity as whole, if you go to a charging station, that you are getting what you are expecting to get, even if it's providing a free service. You would not want to plug in and expect to have a charge in 45 minutes, and you might be there for 2 hours if it was not providing a standard amount, or if it was creating a false advertisement of saying that you can charge in 45 minutes, but it actually took 2 hours or 3 hours. So it would just be for consistency across the industry for consumers to know when they plug in, they're getting what they are expecting.
So are we going to now have to have new signs on all the chargers to say what you should expect? What do you do when it's 25 degrees out and the charge is going to be much slower than when it's 70 degrees out? These are batteries that are using that. So you can measure how many kilowatts you're getting. But each charging station delivers a different amount of that, and no one tells you this is how long it's going to take. My guess is most customers are going to be using the charging stations that are convenient to them. This may, when you're traveling across the country and you're using, your charge point thing, then maybe you do want to know that that's being connected. But if your grocery store has decided that they want to have shade in their parking lot, which mine has done, and make that through solar panels, and offer the people who are shopping there an opportunity to charge for free, I'm not sure that I want them to have to pay extra for something that it's kind of, if you get anything good, and if you don't, well, hey, you got your groceries.
I appreciate those comments. I had the same concern and same thoughts on some of these. So would there be a fee for inspecting charging stations? Do you anticipate a fee?
So right now, if our vision would be that they could choose their service from a company that would provide that, and we do not oversee what those companies charge for that service to come out and certify their
Your inspection of the charging stations. Would there be a fee for the Department of Ag to inspect charging stations?
No, we conduct, all of our weights and measures inspections are not conducted at a fee rate for the inspections. That is not something that we charge for across the industry. But as we are semi-privatized, they can choose to utilize a company of their own choice or wait for the department to come around to do that inspection. We do not charge for that inspection.
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So do you know, have you tried to see if these services are available or contract for them? So do we know how much it would cost? If you live in a rural community, how easy would it be to access that individual that has those abilities to do that inspection. Because if you have to drive 2 hours to get a charging station inspected, it's going to be more expensive than if you had service in town. So do we have any idea if we tried to contract, how much this would cost?
Can you repeat the question? I'm not sure what the question is.
My understanding is you're saying the department's not going to do this inspection. We're just asking people to sign up and have proof that they have an annual inspection. And someone else is providing that. So do we know what that charge might be? Do we know if that service is available?
So we have worked with some of the companies to talk about this. It's my understanding that there's a handful of them that are providing this service because there are some owners of charging stations or they have contracts with entities that are providing these that are having them tested when they're set up to ensure that they're being accurate. I don't know what frequency they are having those inspected. Beyond that, I don't have any information as to what those companies are charging currently and what that might do. But we have worked with the companies who provide these inspection services on other devices to talk about this bill. And right now we've generally had support from the industry to adopt these standards to create this space going forward.
Mr. Chair, if I had a business and could make a rule that says you have to pay me to do this once a year, I might sign up for that too.
Revisor does have an answer to your question, Senator Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, so on page 6, that new language you see starting in line 27, that would not be new law. Currently, those rules and regulations and the authority for those rules and regulations are in KSA 83303, which is being repealed by this bill.
Committee, we are out of time. We will close the hearing on House Bill 2255. We are not going to, as you can tell, get to a hearing on House Bill 2085. I did not anticipate the thoroughness of the committee's work on Senate Bill 211. So we will move the hearing on 2085 to Thursday. Tomorrow, we do have a very full agenda. We will receive a report from Bartlett Soybean Processing Plant down by Cherryvale. As it's a new plant, I think you'll find it interesting and informative. And I thought a simple bill as it relates to honey, but we have multiple conferees on both sides of this issue for tomorrow. So the chair will try to be on time and start on time and try to keep the committee meeting moving tomorrow. So I just thought I would give you that heads up. I have nothing additional for the committee with that.